Welcome to Supernatural Stocks on Moneyweb with your host, the Finance Ghost. This is your weekly fix of equity analysis designed for stock pickers. Whether local or international, you can expect a mix of news and my ideas about what I'm seeing in the markets. This is very much a holiday edition of Supernatural Stocks, so I'll be focusing on an industry that does well at this time of year, the business of play. It's a serious business, but instead of the usual suspects like the major digital gaming houses or perhaps the toy manufacturers, I'll be tackling something a little bit more niche and arguably more economically appealing thanks to the wonderful barriers to entry that these businesses enjoy. Join me in the world of tabletop gaming, specifically with a strategy angle. You'll also have to forgive me for a longer podcast than usual because I am passionate about this stuff, and believe me, I've tried to cut it down. You see, I've always had a love of strategy games. I played loads of chess at school. I got into Magic the Gathering at a young age as well. Now, the big difference here is that chess always starts with exactly the same pieces in exactly the same place. There's no randomness. There's arguably no element of luck. Computers can be trained to play chess at the highest level. The same simply is not true for Magic the Gathering, where building the deck of cards you'll be playing with is a huge part of the game. Also, you never quite know what you'll be coming up against, so there's lots of randomness and variability built into the game. There are also so many decisions that you need to make along the way in each game that, at this stage at least, you're not going to find headlines about computers beating the best players in the world, or even coming close. Hence my love of Magic, and recently Warhammer, which is a fairly similar idea but with plastic miniatures instead of decks of cards. Either way, you're sitting across a table from a smart and interesting person playing a game that requires you to engage both sides of your brain all the time. Now, one of the best things about these games isn't just the challenging gameplay, but the communities around them as well, and I guarantee you'll meet someone interesting along the way and make a few new friends as well. As for upskilling yourself, YouTube is just sensational here, filled with niche content put together by creators who play the same games. Everything that is great about the internet and humanity comes together here for those who recognize the value of play. Yes, even as an adult. In fact, especially as an adult, because one thing I've learned from my kids is we do not spend nearly enough time playing as adults. I'm on a mission to fix that problem in my life. It's made a huge difference to me this year, and I'm clearly not alone in this belief based on just how many creators and communities are out there. As an aside, YouTube is an incredible business and certainly one of the best parts of Alphabet, the same group that owns Google. But back to the companies that focus on play, and there are listed companies that tap directly into this trend. The pure play example, pun intended, is Games Workshop, which trades in London under the ticker GAW, best known for its Warhammer game. As mentioned earlier, Warhammer is based on miniatures rather than cards. You build and paint them yourself, and the painting is an entire subset of the hobby, while others focus on becoming the best players they can be. The fact that there are competitions for both painting and gameplay tells you how immersive this world really is. You pick a faction that you like, you build an army, you learn to play it to the best of your ability, and then you try to win games against others across a tabletop. Now, you may not have any interest in these games, or it may all sound a bit frivolous to you, but how does a 34% share price return this year at Games Workshop sound? That's in pounds, by the way, so take that into account in assessing that percentage. I bet you're listening now, even if you weren't really listening before. Now, the source of this return isn't just from selling more miniatures. No, it's all about the immersive IP that has been developed over literally decades. You see, Games Workshop has entered into an agreement with Amazon for a films and television series, and there's a lot of excitement around that. It will be primarily based on the Warhammer 40k stories, or the lore as us geeks like to call it, which is essentially the sci-fi version of the battles that play out. It will come as no surprise to fans of Henry Cavill, best known for his role in Superman, that he will star in the series. He talks about Warhammer at practically every single opportunity that he gets on a major talk show. This brings us very neatly to the role of influencers in these games. Of course, there are creators who do an incredible job of driving the community forwards and teaching others to play and just raising the level of gameplay in general. Stuff that I had no access to when I played as a kid. YouTube, Twitch, all those other platforms have changed the game. But even the best creators cannot create anywhere near the same hype as a genuine star. And Henry Cavill is that star. He strikes me as someone who would spend every waking hour playing Warhammer if he could get away with it. He absolutely loves it. He posts wholesome stuff on Instagram, like a visit to his local game store on his home island of Jersey, wearing a Warhammer beanie and giving off a vibe that is completely different to the usual Hollywood stuff. That post got over 1.8 million likes, by the way. Talk about incredible publicity. For Magic the Gathering, that star is Post Malone. The award-winning musician grabs headlines in different ways, with the biggest story being that he bought the world's rarest Magic card for $2 million. Yes, that is $2 million, and it is still made of cardboard. In case you are wondering, it's from a Lord of the Rings crossover set, and the card is the One Ring, which would make sense, with an elvish inscription, and only one was printed worldwide. Storytelling is extremely profitable, and as stories go, you will struggle to find more monetizable IP than Lord of the Rings, although Warhammer is certainly going to give it a full go. The underlying lesson here is that in such an internet-driven world where influencers hold more power than ever before, the popularity, and thus the profitability of a game can be substantially affected by a megastar throwing their name behind it. We also cannot ignore the power of digital. These may be tabletop games at heart, but do not underestimate the value of games online. Part of Warhammer's current popularity can also be attributed to games like Space Marine 2, a game that is based on Warhammer 40k that is getting rave reviews at the moment. Not only does this introduce a new generation of people to the IP, but it also captures a market who would simply never land in tabletop gaming. It's less about creating a funnel for the physical game and more about finding new ways to monetize the IP. For example, I love the tabletop games. I don't have much interest in computer games, even though I love the IP. So by being in both places, you just widen the net of people you can make money from. If there's one criticism I have of Magic the Gathering, it's that the IP is introduced too quickly and there are too many different elements to their stories. Hasbro, the listed company that owns Wizards of the Coast and thus Magic the Gathering, cashes in properly on the gameplay itself and in my opinion doesn't put that much effort into the underlying IP anymore. It's much quicker to build a deck of cards than it is to paint up an entire army and find someone to play against, so new sets are released regularly in Magic to keep the gameplay itself fresh. Keeps the till running for sure, but it doesn't create anywhere near the depth of storytelling that you'll find in Warhammer, at least not in my opinion. It therefore makes sense that Magic's digital footprint is based on platforms that allow you to play the game in digital form against players from all over the world, exactly as you would in cardboard form. It's exactly the same concept as playing online chess. So the owners of both Warhammer and Magic the Gathering understand the core strengths of their IP, and this reflects in how they've taken it online. Some good business lessons here, and it helps you understand what the moat actually is for these games. But do they make money? The answer is yes, plenty of it. A recent trading update from Games Workshop reveals that for the 6 months to the 1st of December 2024, they think revenue would be up at least 16.6% to £290 million, and profit before tax they expect to jump by almost 25% to £120 million. Let's just take a moment appreciating a profit before tax margin of 41.4%, not something you'll see every day. When interim results are released on 14th January, the market will then get full details on the performance. As for Hasbro, the owners of Wizards of the Coast and therefore Magic the Gathering, it's unfortunately nowhere near as simple. This is because the way they report combines Wizards of the Coast with other digital gaming as well. So even by going down into the segments in Hasbro, you cannot get a pure view on Magic. And if you buy the listed shares in Hasbro, which would be your only way to get exposure, you then have all kinds of other stuff in there, including toys on the shelves at your local store. And believe me, there's not much of a moat in that stuff. So the numbers here are skewed by things like the Monopoly digital game, for example. And in the latest quarter, we do at least know that even though the Lord of the Rings set was in the base period, Magic still grew its revenue by 3%. Doesn't sound like a lot, and it's not a lot. But the operating margin for the Wizards segment came in at 44.9%, and we know that the licensed and digital gaming side is dragging it down, so Magic is operating at even higher margins. It is a very profitable business. So for investors, which one, if either, should they consider? Well, the messiness of Hasbro as a listed group means that it is actually just off the table if the whole idea here is to get access to Magic the Gathering as a business. This is why activist investors have spent years screaming for Hasbro to unbundle and separately list Wizards of the Coast. It hasn't happened yet. It probably won't happen, to be honest, because it's a cash cow for Hasbro and they need that cash cow. But even if Wizards was separately listed, Magic is releasing sets at what feels like an almost unsustainable rate right now, and even then it can only manage low single digits revenue growth. I'm scared that some fatigue might set in among players in terms of what they need to keep spending to stay competitive in the hobby. It's a tremendous business, but I do wonder if there's a slow growth curve here based on just how long the game has been around. Also, they do not have a new Amazon series coming with a megastar like Henry Cavill living out his dream by playing a Warhammer character. Combine that with how Games Workshop gives you purely exposure to Warhammer and no other weird stuff like at Hasbro, it makes Games Workshop the obvious choice for this theme. The challenge is you'll need quite a serious offshore brokerage platform to be able to buy the stock, especially because it is listed in London rather than the US, which is where most South Africans look for offshore exposure. Now, if only Games Workshop would list a tradable instrument in the US off the back of this Amazon series, I think that could do some quite incredible things for the Games Workshop share price, and it is certainly one to watch. For now though, I must get back to painting. It is a steep learning curve, and one that I'm hugely enjoying. There's no such thing as an opportunity without risk, and these are merely my opinions on the stocks covered herein. Make sure that you do your own research, form your own views on the market when doing anything in your portfolio. Nothing in supernatural stocks should be taken as advice.